not a typewriter. So this is a file, I mean, this is how, this is what you get when you look at the screen, right? Anything you do on a keyboard means something to the computer. So it's like the guimauché, it leaves a trace, whether you see it or you don't. So in Word there is a nice little incomprehensible sign that allows you to see even invisible signs. So an arrow means that whoever typed used a tab sign. Those little dots, they're all spaces. So you space, like in an example like that, you distribute your separate words in a sentence by multiple spaces. That's a no-no in a word processing. Because, I mean, this looks like this on, just like looking at it on the screen, it may look cool. You take it to a printer and it no longer does. And you know why? Because that tab on this particular machine it has a specific measure assigned to it. On this machine, it is 1/2 centimeter. On the printer, it could be 1. You don't know what the tab in the printer is. The printer receives an instruction, print a tab, and it does. It doesn't know that this is not, because the tab here is 0.5. Okay? So that's one. It's the same thing with the space. The printer receives an instruction, put in 4 spaces. You don't know how many, what the exact measurement of a space in the printer is. So, one way around this is to explicitly set your, that multiple spaces is like, forget it. Don't do it. It's not a typewriter, this is a word processor. Use the capabilities that a word processor gives you. Don't live in the 19th century. So one thing to do is to set your tabs exactly to 0.5, and that's different because then the printer will, when you go to, I'll repeat that, you go to paragraph and you go to tab and you say that your default tab should be 0.5 and nothing else, then there is an additional instruction that goes to the printer and says you disregard your own tab space. You print my tab space, which is 0.5. And then once you 0.5 is a good measure because then you can, there are many ways to space examples. I'm going to give you the simplest one, and that's the one that publishers like best. So it might as well work. So it's one tab and you see that it's not aligned well, and you go until it aligns. So you can use multiple tabs here, but they have an explicit instruction, and that aligns, that will, so on the first line you might have 3, on the second line you might have 2 to get these words to align with each other, but printer-wise and space-wise, there will be sound. Do you understand me? Okay. So that was one thing I wanted to say that is important. The other thing is like, do you use insert character? You do not. Okay. That's fine, you know. But I'm going to give you an assignment to do transcription. And to do transcription, you need to know where to find IPA characters. On most modern machines, their IPA is implemented in most fonts, you need to be able to find, okay? So if you use Word, I don't know how many, are there people here who go on Linux, OpenOffice, anything like this? No, okay. So we're staying in Microsoft space, and you find a menu that's called Insert. It's usually right to the home menu, and you want to go to Insert Symbol. Okay. Now I'll give you the Turkish characters that I used when preparing, but so it will usually, I mean, I work in times, but here is Verdana, it doesn't really matter. So it starts, what you see is usually the basic Latin characters, and then you scroll down and you will hit extended Latin, and then you'll go down and you'll hit IPA. Okay. What you do, you select your character, you say insert. What Word does is that it keeps track of what symbols you used recently. So, I mean, you usually don't work like, this is Unicode coding, so there are thousands of characters that are coded, which means that they're numerically coded and each of them has its own numeric value. You don't work with all of them all at the same time. You use a subset. So this is a nice feature that Word has. It doesn't have very many nice features, but this is one good feature. It does remember what you used, and then you don't have to go look for it again. Because it's very tedious work to go through all of these characters, and at some point you get lost and you're like, well, why can't I just type something arbitrarily and then replace it, and then you forget what arbitrary thing you were doing. So it pays off to find your character right away. That's the other thing I wanted to say, because you're going to need it for the homework, and even if you didn't need it, I think it's like anything that you have to do with language, you need to know about it. So those were two practical things. Alright, so last time it became apparent that people don't know about IPA, and there hasn't been much talk about phonology. So this is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to introduce the concept, because I can't go on with the class if you don't have a basic concept of phonemes, phonological features, how we talk about the sounds of the languages of the world. I'm going to introduce the IPA and consonant and vowel inventories that are coded by it, and the consonant and vowel inventories that we find in the languages of the world. And I'm going to say something about transcription. So, we have been dealing with morphemes as the minimal meaning-carrying units in a language. Okay, a morpheme is something that is a minimal unit, not always free, but it carries a meaning of its own. So in English, ed carries past tense. In Turkish, dur carries causative. They need to combine with stuff, but they do have that meaning. We're going at a lower level here. Segments that don't carry meaning by themselves, but they make a difference in meaning. So the phoneme is the minimal unit that distinguishes the meaning from when substituted by a similar unit, it makes a difference in meaning. So phonemes, very crude and first step to identify if something is a phoneme, which means if something is a sound in a language. We can produce many sounds, but here we are looking at sounds that are part of the language system. They need to make a difference in meaning. So the first and crude procedure is to look at minimal pairs of words. They're called minimal pairs because the only difference between the words that I've listed here is one single sound in one of the same position of the word. So pick and bit, the difference is between P and B, and that's initial. Okay. Then pen versus pin, the only difference is E versus E, and that's medial. Now come to think of it, I only chose, then my other examples are initial as well, but S and L can be said to be sounds in English because they make a difference between song and long. Race and lace, L and R are sounds in English because they do make a difference in meaning. There won't be, shall I close that door? Okay. Okay. Now, not surprisingly, not all languages will have these distinctions. Aspiration, for instance, in English is not a distinctive feature. So I'll go through the articulate or the anatomy of aspiration in a while, but saying pit and pit is, it reflects the difference in pronunciation, and one renders you as a non-native speaker, and so on, but you can still understand that it's the word pit, all right? So features that are significant in one language system won't be in another. Again, phoneme is an abstract notion just like a morpheme is. So, p aspirated and p inaspirated are allophones of the same phoneme. Okay. How to tell whether something is phoneme or not? There is like something very important here. If you don't know it, you have to learn it now. Complementary versus free distribution. Does this ring a bell? Okay. So that's the key. If I say that two sounds are in complementary distribution, this means that they can appear in different positions, in different environments, in different words. So aspirated P will appear in an initial position in front of specific vowels in English. Unaspirated P will appear in medial positions. So they appear in different environments. They are in complementary distribution. The pairs I showed here, P and B, are in the same position and same environment. They show a contrastive distribution. That's very important. Take it down when you read the texts later on. Any linguistic book will assume that you know what complementary distribution is and what contrastive distribution is. Contrastive means that they make a contrast. There is actually a consequence if you substitute that P for a B. You get a completely different word. Okay. So, if the two sounds are in complementary distribution, and you say yes for aspirated P and unaspirated P, and you go down, are they phonetically similar? Well, yeah, they're both P's, and one has aspiration and the other one doesn't. Okay, so they are allophones of the same phoneme. Okay. If they're not phonetically similar, they appear in different environments, but they're not phonetically similar, like P and T, then you're most probably dealing with different sounds, if they belong to different phonemes. Now, if the answer here is no, they're not in complementary distribution, and if one, so they are in contrast, they are found in contrastive pairs, like the ones I showed. And if you substitute one to the for the other, you get a change in meaning, then they're different sounds. And if you don't get a change in meaning, then they are in free variation. So I have introduced 3 theoretical notions: complementary distribution, contrastive distribution, and free variation. And then the phoneme. Okay. Now expect you to understand me from now on. When I say complementary distribution, this means that they appear in different environments. By environment I mean word initially, initial, final, medial. With the same, I mean some sounds like to keep the same company. They're kind of restricted sounds. Well, those are restricted. But most sounds, they can move around and change company. But if, suppose we are describing a language, or it's a language we don't know, because this is what we're looking at. How do we tell if R and L are one sound or the same sound? They're phonetically very similar. And there are languages where they are allophones of the same sound. In our languages, they happen to be contrastive, so they're not in complementary distribution because they appear in contrastive pairs. I cannot give you the Turkish examples because my Turkish is like, I've taken 3 Turkish lessons. I'm very proud of them. But in English they are, okay. And in very many languages of Europe they are. So contrastive means the same environment, the same position in the word, and the same accompanying sounds. The same sounds that are received, they don't change. And if you substitute one for the other, you get a new meaning. You get a different meaning. That's what contrastive means. And then free variation is whether you use the voiceless or the voiced one or the aspirated or the unaspirated one. It doesn't really matter. They appear in free variation. Okay. Conditioning is not clear. So, now